Tetris is arguably the best-selling video game of all time. Compared to the rest of the top 10 list, which includes Minecraft, GTA 5, Pokemon Red and Blue, all of these games put together would still be fewer games sold than Tetris. How did this happen? Tetris is a game about putting blocks in a line and then making them disappear, and then suddenly you win, except there are more coming, and how? How did this happen? What happened to make this more popular than this? Well, mobile sales mainly, so, better question. What happened to make this thing so big? Coded in 1984 in the Soviet Union, Alexei Pachadov dreamed of a game that could emulate a tile puzzle called Pentominoes and wasn't violent like other games released around that time, such as Space Invaders. Alexei changed the blocks so they were pieces of 4 instead of 5, making them tetrominos, and made them fall from the sky and disappear when forming a line. Oinomes was removed and replaced with is for tennis reasons, and thus Tetris was born. Alexei and a few colleagues created a couple of copies to share with a couple of friends. One thing led to another, and the next thing you know, everyone in the Soviet Union has a copy of Tetris. The game was then shared with Hungary, where software publisher Robert Stein from Andromeda Software found it. And he loved it! He threw Alexei a telex, asking about obtaining the rights to sell the PC versions of Tetris. Alexei, whose experience with Western capitalism is zero, responded with a, yeah, sure, maybe. And so Robert Stein sold the PC rights to a company called Microsoft. Then Microsoft asked Stein if he had the rights to other hardware, such as consoles, to which Stein replied, yeah, sure, maybe. So Microsoft sold all of the rights that didn't exist to a load of game publishers, who then sold them all, again, creating a confusing rights web all across the globe. For instance, game publisher Hank Rogers wanted to make Tetris for the NES in Japan. So he got console rights from Atari, who had traded them from Microsoft, who had gotten them from Stein, who was the proud owner of a big sack of lies. But this meant everyone in the world has access to Tetris. Marketing marketed it heavily around a Russian theme. That Tetris music you hear is actually a Russian folk song put into the game called Koroveiniki. Stein, meanwhile, is phoning Alexei trying to get more rights. Alexei picks up the phone and surprises Stein by being someone totally different, called Belikov, head of the Soviet-run E-Log, who has the task of undebacling this whole debacle. He responds to Stein with a firm and angry, "Nyet! Agree to PC rights first, then get more rights. Also pay money." As they had barely even seen a penny yet. Meanwhile, in Japan, Nintendo really liked Tetris, and they're making a brand new games console called the Game Boy. And Tetris would be incredible on this. It is a handheld device, and thus it needs handheld rights. But they don't really want their competitors to know that they're making a handheld console, so shh. They hire Hank Rogers to buy the rights, and you can tell he is important, as he is the only character who comes with a cool montage. Hank Rogers had worked in the video game industry for a few years, starting his own company called Bulletproof Software. His first game was The Black Onyx, a game known for being the first RPG in Japan, even though it wasn't. Now this game would go on to directly inspire the JRPG genre, you know, a genre that includes titles like Final Fantasy! So Hank gets on the blower to Stein and says in his Japanese, American, Dutch accent, "Alright, me old China. Now listen, bruv, I need handheld rights for Tetris, right? You wouldn't mind passing them my way, would you, geezer? That'd be well handsome." And Stein replies, "Yeah, sure, maybe. We'll go Russia, sort that. Go back later." And then he flies off to Russia for a meeting to sort out the rights again. But this time, he's going to try and get his hands on the handheld rights as well. Hank realizes that he could skip Stein and get the handheld rights himself. So he flies to Moscow, and like an epic hipster, he vlogged the whole thing. Take that, doing it before it was cool. Microsoft decided that they would like to be more involved in the plot, and thus have sent out Kevin Maxwell to tidy things up and remove Stein from said plot. So now there are 3 people in Moscow trying to buy the rights for Tetris on the same day. Belikov organizes 3 meetings at 3 different times to make sure that neither would meet the other. Hank arrives first, and he shows a copy of the game he's been selling with the rights that don't exist. This of course makes the Russians' jimmies a smidge rustled. So Hank does something that no one else is doing. He pays E-Log and gives them his copy of Tetris. And thus Hank and Belikov became friends. he also manages to find Alexei and talks about the games he developed and asks about what Alexei plans to do next. And now they're also friends. Next is Stein. Belikov is sick of Stein. He isn't paying them, so instead of giving him any more rights, Belikov gives Stein an amended contract which specifies he only has the PC rights to Tetris. To confuse Stein, he also increases late payment fees massively. Stein is so busy looking at those big increases that he misses the amendment and signs on the dotted line. Finally, it's Maxwell. Maxwell's dad, Robert Maxwell, is the head of Microsoft and is friends with a minor person in the Soviet government, no one important, called Gorbachev. So when he walks into the meeting asking about buying up the remaining rights, he was surprised to hear Belikov's literally paraphrased reply was, "Oh, like these console rights you own? To games that are being sold? Like this one?" Oh no. Wait. The meeting does break down from there, but because Kevin's dad is important, Belikov gives Microsoft the rights of first refusal on Tetris rights deals. All of this now means that all but PC rights are up for sale. But who will get them? Hank gets them. Like, come on guys, there's only one guy they've made friends with thus far. Elog makes sure to call up Microsoft first and ask if they want to refuse that, but instead of saying no, Kevin says, "We already own those." Because he's so good at business. He is so good at business, in fact, that the present British government has decided he's not allowed to run businesses. So now Nintendo have all the rights, bar PC of course, and this makes Nintendo so happy they sue Atari for infringing on their rights. And they win! Which means only Nintendo can make Tetris for consoles and handheld devices. This of course turns Nintendo's handheld division into a money printing factory for the next forever. Atari is so upset by all of this, half of it goes bankrupt for the second time. The Soviet Union is so happy it forgets to be a country, and then it collapses! Though this is probably unrelated to Tetris. And Microsoft, not to be outdone by everyone else, goes bankrupt and collapses. And what of poor Pajitnov? Well, the man who made Tetris was happy. Not over all the bureaucracy and business dealings, but people played his game. Hell, he didn't even see a penny from Tetris until the Soviet Union lost the rights. He got to spread some happiness to the whole world, which was his aim to begin with. He later on moved to America and worked on video games for a lovely little unimpressive company, one which wouldn't be shrouded in corporate shenanigans or questionable customer relationship practices or